because they said it. As far as you're concerned, they believed what they said because they did it. So it must define them. That's their real character. But what if they were acting an auditioned role? What if they were assigned those roles? Have you forgotten how we concluded as younger people, small children, that the role people act in movies represent their real behaviors and tendency in some ways? Don't you laugh at yourself when you look at the fact that we thought those who died in the movie actually died until we see them in another movie? This is called the correspondence bias. It's bias number 49 in our 225 plus bias series. My name is Cussons, Africa's premium high performance thinking and strategic execution expert. Now, correspondence bias is the tendency to assume that a person's actions, thinking, expressions per time corresponds to his or her inherent behaviors, and that it reliably reveals their underlying attitudes, their underlying social roles, their underlying, ways of thinking. Now, without thinking about, are they acting as a lawyer, defending a criminal? Does it make them a criminal? Now, this particular bias, the correspondence bias, is closely related to what we had done before we called fundamental attribution error. Now, one important distinction between fundamental attribution error and correspondence bias, which we are doing now, is that while fundamental attribution error underweighs situations, okay, correspondence bias overread situations and think that because he has done this, he is this. Yeah. So the automatic assumption that behavior and belief are always aligned is the problem with correspondence bias, and it destroys relationships. It destroys quite a lot. That's what someone does is always a direct window into who they actually are. The debater argues a position. Maybe he's pro abortion in that position. Maybe he's pro capital punishment. So you think that they must hold that position. The employee follows a policy, so they must agree with that policy, and they love the policy. Somebody smiles and you think they must be happy. It's not true. The person is quiet, so they must be unfriendly. The person looks at you and look at why you were talking. Oh, they are rude. Yeah. And in almost every case, the correspondence is far weaker than your brain assumes, but you are not saying that. Now, we are not just throwing away correspondence and saying, oh, nothing like that, or people's character should be overlooked. No, but what we're saying is that apply caution so that bias doesn't come in. In business, when a law firm assigns a junior associate, or call him smart or whoever, to argue case position he personally finds ethically uncomfortable, it is his professional obligation. So he can still go and do that. He argues it competently and convincingly because that is what the role requires. Okay? Now, when the senior partner looks at him, he observes the performance and concludes, Emeka clearly has no ethical reservation about this type of case. So we'll give him more of this case. He'll be a strong fit for our aggressive litigation team. Now, but you need to really ask them. That's why some people are in a role. After some time, you find them being depressed. You find them actually having issues with their mental health and all those, because you thought, don't always think, always ask. Now, this partner has read Emeka's, Smart or Emeka's or Yusuf or whatever, has read his or her professional performance as personal conviction regarding that case. He has assumed, correspondence between the role required behavior, which is the behavior he required in that role, and his personal, convictions and beliefs. So smart Emeka Yusuf is placed on the aggressive litigation team. He becomes increasingly miserable because he doesn't believe what he's saying. Within 18 months, he resigns from that job to join a firm whose work aligns with his actual, beliefs and actual dispositions. The part that never asked, he read the behavior and assumed that his behavior corresponds to his belief. That may not always be true. He lost a talented associate simply because he never asked, he never brooded in. Yeah, he could have had that conversation and it would have saved a lot. And now, this particular thing also corrupts market research. You could come in a focus group and you're asking a question and somebody just answered to be, socially correct. And because of that, you think that, the research is going in the right way. You say, don't you like this? The person says, I love it. It's a good product. Yeah. So how you structure the question sometimes can also make people answer in particular ways. So when you find out that these people are saying, oh yeah, it's like in a meeting. When the boss is there, people could answer in a particular way, just not to make the boss unhappy. Okay. Now, when the research team reads this, they think that there's enthusiasm and there's Zoom correspondent within what these people said and, the actual truth. They launch, and then at the end of the day, the market responds with the actual answer because, there was correspondence bias. Yeah? Correspondence bias in this particular research just turned socially motivated politeness into a multi-million naira product development decision. You wouldn't ask, what are the intervening dispositions that made this person say yes? Yeah. Did he want to sound right? Was his father there? Or, he doesn't want to lose the job and all those. The same in relationships. A man on a first date is nervous, is shaking because, he feels this is out of my league and, or he's not done it often. He doesn't really know what to say, not to lose this person and all those. Yeah. And the lady now concludes that, he can converse, he's charming, but he's shallow. He's just surface based. Not serious enough for what I'm looking for and all that. The same for vice versa. The man could look at a lady that way. The lady could look at the man that way. Now, he or she is reading his or her nervous, performance as his actual character. She's assuming perfect correspondence between the behavior anxiety produced in the guy because of the high pressure contest and thinking that person is shallow simply because he wasn't able to respond as fast and all those. Okay, he wasn't familiar with that place and it was a high stake environment and all those. Yeah. Now she doesn't go on a second date with the person to find out more. She never meets the thoughtful, deeply intentional man that the first date's anxiety completely obscured. Correspondence bias is quite a serious one. Don't always judge a book by its cover. Yeah. But you see, as a book, you need to have good cover so that people don't judge you wrongly simply because they thought that your cover represents you. Now, there are some fixes. You have to be discerning, generous, and then always apply this, things I'm going to tell you. Number one is always ask. Before assuming correspondence, always ask, could this behavior be role required or situation driven behavior? Always ask that question before concluding that what someone said or did reflects what they believe or who they are. Always ask that question. Was this behavior something the situation required, the role required, the social context demanded? Yeah? Or is it something that is personal to him, that his character portrays? Always ask that question. The debater may be assigned their position. There's this joke about a guy or a content creator who made a video and was begging money to forgive him because that there was a time they were asked in a debate club and he was proposing that education is better than money and our schooling is better than money, that's why money has refused to come to him. So he was apologizing to money that now he's grown, he knows that money is better, so that money should forgive him that he did that as a child. Now that's on the jocular part. The employee may be following policy they privately question. Okay, the agreeable focus group participant may be managing social pressure, saying yes to what he or she would have on his own said no. The role required behavior is not a character evidence. So, situationally demanded behavior is also not belief confirmation. So you should also know that. So ask the question before you make the correspondence. So number 2 is test your correspondent conclusions with direct conversation. Yeah. The most reliable antidote to correspondence bias is simple and direct. Be able to ask the person what they actually think themselves about this position they are holding or this behavior they are performing. Yeah, say something like, I noticed you argue that position very strongly. You were so strongly arguing the position about abortion or capital punishment or this or that. Is that something you personally believe? Is that your personal conviction? Now, the feedback you gave was positive. Was there anything that didn't resonate for you? Would you have had a but? Yeah. So the person could tell you, yeah, I gave a but, yeah. Now, you seem very confident in that meeting. Is that how you typically approach this kind of challenge? Ask these kinds of questions. They are very important. These questions are not intrusive. They are the basic investigative moves you need to make that replace assumed correspondence with actual understanding. And if you don't do that, you will not have that actual understanding. You could take a position that doesn't actually reflect that could fall into correspondence bias. And number 3 is observe behavior across multiple contexts. Observe behavior across multiple contexts. If you had a date, if it is not overly negative, you could have 2 or 3 more times to find out what could be the actual person's behavior, so that you don't go into correspondence bias. One observation in one context under one set of situational pressure is not or may not be sufficient foundation for reliable character conclusion. But that doesn't mean you won't be careful and protect yourself. Yeah. But if the correspondence is too obvious, you better observe. Now, you need to check out the person in multiple environments, under different pressures, in different roles, across varied circumstances, to be able to say, oh, the behavior that persists across this context is no more something that falls into correspondence bias. Okay, you say this is generally his or her character. Yeah, it happens with other things, looking for patterns and algorithms across, different things, whether in stock market or that. The behavior changes that you see across contexts, and then you see that there's change between this context and that context. You may now know that this may not be the soul of the person's behavior. It could be contextual. So, very important truth before we close, and this is that correspondent bias do some obscuring. Yeah, it obscures a lot of things in boardrooms, in interviews, in conversations. Yeah, so people are always more complex than the behavior you observe in the moment you met them. So, but if correspondent bias is there, it won't allow you to know that this truth is being obscured from you. Yeah. Now, the nervous first date we mentioned is not the shallow person you think he or she is. Okay. Now, the assigned position debater is not the true believer you assume he was or she was because he defended a particular position. The agreeable focus group, participant in that research is not the enthusiastic customer you projected her to be and the person who will buy that product. The quiet team member who is not talking is not disengaged employee you fight her or him under. They were all performing in the specific constraint pressure shaped way that the circumstances demanded for them. Yeah, that specific moment demanded they behave that way for them, and you have concluded. So behind every role required performance, behind every situationally shaped behavior is a complete human being whose actual beliefs, actual values, whose actual character, whose actual motivations, deserves more than just 30 seconds, 1 minute, or even 1 hour correspondent conclusion. Your brain could deliver this correspondent conclusion without understanding this person's, properly. And even when they have not finished all the sentences, So read less into the moment, investigate more into the personality of the person. Ask questions before you conclude. Observe before you file this person to a particular category and heading, and extend to every human being you evaluate the same basic dignity of not being permanently defined by the behavior that circumstances temporarily produce per time. You could check further, you could check context, you could check multiple contents. That discernment is very important in hiring, in partnership, in love. That discernment is worth more than every snap judgment that leads to correspondence bias. Correspondence bias, ever delivered with such convincing speed, is always the killer of relationships, deals, and even businesses. So, behavior is evidence. Behavior is not verdict. You need to investigate before you conclude. This is bias number 49 in our 225 plus bias series. So share this with every leader, every recruiter, every person in relationship who needs to slow down between observation and conclusion. My question: when was the last time you fed the mind that makes the money? Click the link below and be part of Dr. Kali Cussons webinars and Dr. Kali Cussons master classes. See you